Good morning. I want to extend a warm welcome to those here safely in person and to those viewing right now live via live stream. My name is Sydney Kamlager. I am the Assemblywoman for the 54th State Assembly District, and I and my colleagues and stakeholders and warriors are here today to announce ACA3, the California Abolition Act. On the heels of the abolition movement nationwide, the California Abolition Act seeks to abolish forced labor and involuntary servitude unconditionally in the state of California. Currently, this progressive state's constitution prohibits slavery and involuntary servitude except for the punishment of a crime, which means slavery and involuntary servitude are still on our books. I think this is outrageous, unconscionable, and wrong. And I think it is time for it to go. In the year of 2021, as we self-reflect what this nation stands for and who this state is, let us muster the courage to emancipate ourselves from these kinds of laws and these systems that bind us to a history of bondage, slave labor, and entrenched poverty. The psychological effects of modern-day slavery and involuntary servitude are well documented. Just look at the poverty rates, the unemployment rates, the reincarceration rates, and you will see that this has to go. Today, 12 states prohibit enslavement and involuntary servitude. However, their constitution includes that nasty little provision with an exception of criminal punishment. 9 states permit involuntary servitude as a criminal punishment, California being one of them. And 1 state even permits involuntary servitude to pay a debt, a damage, fine, or a cost. Our state constitution has yet to reflect the values of equality, justice, and equity that Californians now are demanding. Dissolving the remnants of slavery and racial inequality is more important now than ever before. In 2018, Colorado passed a measure that removed slavery and involuntary servitude as a criminal punishment from its state constitution. In 2020, voters in Nebraska and Utah did the same. It's our time, right now. And I am confident, with a strong push on the ground, led by Jamelia Land and our ACA coalition, and with continuing efforts from my colleagues in the Assembly and the Senate, and I am calling you all out right now to support this bill, we can move ACA over the finish line. I am thankful to have standing alongside me members of our ACA3 support coalition, and together we will move California forward into this century with equality, justice, and equity front and center. Jamelia?
Good morning. First, I would like to congratulate our new Senator-elect, Kamlager. On behalf of Samuel Nathaniel Brown, ACA3 Coalition, and every citizen in the state of California, we would like to thank you, Senator-elect, for taking on this challenge. I want to start off by not only thanking the members, but for the community and the press and those that are watching virtually. Thank you for tuning in and supporting this historic cause. My name is Jamelia Land. I am the co-founder of ASAP, Anti-Violence Safety and Accountability Project. My husband, Samuel Nathaniel Brown, is currently incarcerated at Lancaster State Prison. He is the original author of the proposal that our wonderful Senator-elect agreed to author. Today marks an era of unprecedented times, where as a nation we are experiencing trauma that we could not have predicted. This trauma will run deep and may last for generations to come. As we build our nation, we are stepping forward to create a stronger and more equitable future. Today, we are here to speak to you about ACA3, a fundamental issue that should be framed into our new equitable foundation. To speak frankly and clearly, ACA3 is an amendment to our state constitution. We are asking to remove a sentence from the 13th Amendment. This bill will remove the caveat of involuntary servitude for punishment from our state constitution and rid our state of the residual effects of slavery. We as a state and nation have banded together to condemn similar crimes against humanity. We have stood up to stop crimes of child labor, human trafficking, and wage theft, where people are being forced into servitude without choice or fair compensation. The same moral compass has directed us to stand and fight against these inhumane acts has prompted ACA3. People that are currently being forced into labor without fair or just compensation are currently being forced to sew bras for companies like Victoria's Secrets, assemble jeans, fabricate license plates, work in warehouses for private companies, and even fight fires for communities in need, but for wages as little as 8 cents per hour. What ACA3 would require is that labor, not related to simple cleanliness or maintenance of the prison and jail facilities, to pay a fair wage, a wage that will make inmates inaccessible to private companies as cheap labor. Today, we stand proudly and boldly on behalf of the citizens of the state of California to say that involuntary servitude, a vestige of slavery, is not acceptable in the state of California in the year 2020-21. There will be a lot of conversation around prison wages, and I want to be very clear that this is not an issue of wage. This is an issue of humanity. This is an issue of, do we want to continue in the year 2021 to live in a state that holds language in its constitution that is directly tied to slavery? My answer to that question is no. Thank you for your time.
Well, good morning, everyone. And I want to start by thanking and congratulating State Senator-elect Sydney Kamlager. It was a great week for the state of California to have Sydney win that election, and I think today is an example of why State Senator-elect Kamlager is the kind of leader that we need here in California. And this coalition that surrounds us is the kind of movement that we need to celebrate, encourage, and support here in California. Now, involuntary servitude is slavery by another name. And it's interesting because when I read articles about this ACA being introduced, what have you, some folks are like, well, you know, this is part of how we operate our prison. Or I'm against involuntary servitude per se, which to me tells you that they really aren't against slavery. We're taught in our history that slavery was abolished over 150 years ago, but we know that's just not the case, based upon the fact that we know that there are folks that are currently incarcerated that are being required to do things. And I think the pandemic has exposed this more clearly than ever. That's right. Everybody has the right to be free from putting themselves in harm's way. No one should be forced to do anything. And involuntary servitude, as has been mentioned, is not just a vestige that connects us with our slavery past. It is our slavery past, manifesting itself in the present day. And we have to make sure that we have a society that respects everyone's humanity and get away from the judgment of anyone being less than anyone else, regardless of what society might label them. And let's not forget, when we talk about the prison industrial complex, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about a system that sustains itself on the bodies of human beings, on the labor of human beings. And so it is past time for us, far past time for us, to say once and for all that slavery and involuntary servitude must be permanently abolished from our society. And once we do that, we can have conversations about what someone's labor is worth, whether they're in an incarcerated state or not. But can we at least have a common agreement that involuntary servitude should be immediately abolished? And that's what we're asking for. That's what this incredible coalition behind me is asking for. That's what our state senator-elect is asking for. And we're not going to stop until we make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Joseph Gray. I'm the Sacramento Director for the Anti-Recidivism Coalition here in Sacramento. We are joined here this morning due to the moral issue of slavery. And we just have to call it what it is. ARC's Executive Director, Sam Lewis, I think quoted it perfectly when he said this, and I quote, "ACA3 is a massive step in California's quest to end systemic racism. The Constitution of the state of California should espouse true equality for all people and not perpetuate the lineage of American slavery." You know, for California, a state who prides itself on being a leader for racial equity and equality in the nation, we have done little to remove the fragmented segments of slavery that still exist in our very own state. Instead, we find ourselves needing to follow the lead of states like Nebraska and Utah and Colorado, who I would have never imagined to be the leader of racial equity and equality in this nation. However, all of those states have already eliminated the language of slavery from their state's constitution. ACA3 is about disintegrating the remnants of slavery, the remnants that are still very present in this state today. Today we are brought here to tell California we will no longer allow slavery to clinch onto California's constitution. That ends now, and that ends with us. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is April Grayson, and I'm the Policy Associate for the Young Women's Freedom Center. And I stand before you as a formerly incarcerated woman who served 17 years in the world's largest women's institution. And so as I stand before you, I represent a coalition called the Sister Warrior Freedom Coalition. And last year, on March 9th, the Sister Warrior Freedom Coalition came out 500 deep from different cities throughout the state. We introduced our Freedom Charter with a 10-year strategy that would transform our communities. Freedom 2030 is a radical vision of what a free and thriving world would, could, and should look like for our families. And two goals of Freedom 2030, which are in perfect alignment with ACA3, is ending the profiting off of incarceration and the criminal legal system and replace existing systems. Oh, I need that. It wouldn't be right if that didn't happen. Thank you. Replace existing systems and legislation with those that uphold and are accountable to the Freedom Charter and those most impacted. I would like to quote the Policy Director of the Young Women's Freedom Center, Amaka Mota. Prison policing and family separation systems are rooted in the histories of the colonization of indigenous people, slavery, Jim Crow laws, and continue to reflect racial apartheid in the United States. Our families and communities have been denied our humanity, our basic human and civil rights and healing. ACA3 is a bold and courageous step towards replacing existing systems with those that are accountable to the most impacted people, and towards freedom and liberation for all of us, our ultimate version for California and the nation. And I would like to say, Black and brown bodies in cages are the commodity that feed the prison industry and dates back to the early 1600s. To be frank, it is women of color that support our loved ones behind bars that carry the financial burden in communities devastated by incarceration. Ending profits made off of incarceration and the criminal legal system will put our broken justice system on the right side of history. By restoring dignity and basic human rights, California will be leading the change that our nation needs to see and embrace. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sylvester Annie, founder of the Love We Don't See and Project No New Slaves. Today I want to say that aside from the color of my skin, one other thing that I have in common with my ancestors is that I've never known an America that hasn't legalized slavery. When I think about the uprisings in Haiti that inspired uprisings in America, when I think about the ancestors that died rather than be enslaved, when I think about Mama Harriet Tubman that led slaves, enslaved people away to safety, to freedom, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, Medgar Evers, James Baldwin, Dr. Martin Luther King, Ida B. Wells, when I think of all those names, this today is a culmination of the sacrifice, the blood, the sweat, the tears that people have suffered just to be free. This should not be misunderstood. This is a moral issue. And so often we're always told, why can't you get over slavery? It was so long ago. Move past it. How can we move past something that's never ended? How can we move past something that lives and has an effect on every single sector in society in our country? It's not possible. But because of the names of the people that I named and so many more, and everybody standing behind me right now, that is possible. We can be free. And we have to understand that we can't be free unless we're all free. That's right. So I'm so blessed to stand beside every single one of these individuals who are putting their bodies on the line so that others can be free. And I just want to say in solidarity and in love, that love is what has pushed us this far. And in 2021, slavery will not be something that's permitted in the state of California. My kids will not ever have to go through something like that. They'll never have to live in an America where slavery is a potential outcome for their life. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Allegra Taylor, co-founder of the Village Advocates of Sacramento. We, as a nation, as a people, cannot begin the process of gaining reparations for Black people until we abolish involuntary servitude in the Constitution. It is fundamentally disproportionate and unconscionable that in 2021 we have any form of slavery. By definition, it is double jeopardy to be imprisoned, serve time for a crime, pay restitution, and then be disenfranchised with the mark of slavery. Our brothers and sisters are being treated as slaves for the sole purpose of the 1% obtaining more wealth on the backs of the marginalized. Wages are so low that they might as well be free labor, free prison labor. This is simply slavery by another name. We stand in solidarity and consider it our duty to stand with this coalition to abolish the slavery loophole in the 13th Amendment. Only then can we as a nation begin to free this country from the indignation and the unrighteousness, one bill at a time.
So, on the line, calling in from California State Prison, Los Angeles County, I have on the phone Samuel Nathaniel Brown, who is the original author of the proposal that has become ACA3. Samuel?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everyone.
Go ahead.
And so I just want to earn my GED so I can enroll in college. These were the words spoken to me by a young Hispanic brother barely a month ago. And his frustration was palpable as he continued. They are forcing me to walk around the inside perimeter of the prison, picking up trash and litter that they throw on the ground. This doesn't help me. I want to do something that me and my family can be proud of. He went on to explain that he tried to get unassigned but was threatened with a rules violation report and forced to continue to work. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what involuntary servitude looks like. My name is Samuel Nathaniel Brown, and I'm an inside member of ARC and a co-founder of the Anti-Violence, Safety, and Accountability Project, commonly known as ASAP. And we decided to name our organization ASAP because we believe that equality and equanimity are always urgent. And it is for this reason that we come before you today with a sense of urgency to remedy an ill that has silently plagued California with an equality of epidemic proportions, and it's called involuntary servitude, and ACA3 is the vaccine. Before I continue, I must take time to express tremendous gratitude to and congratulate our new Senator, Sidney Kamlager Dove, Ms. Keith, that's right, and the entire Kamlager Dove staff that worked to make this moment possible. We thank you. I also thank our California Abolition Act Coalition members, including but not limited to ASAP, the 10P program, ARC, Courage Campaign, CSUS Center for African Peace and Conflict Resolution, ASNN, FEW, Fair Chance Project, Uncommon Law, Impact, Bend the Arc, Etsy Justice Center.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Pride and True, Ms. Shea, Village Advocates, Young Women's Freedom Center, Sister Warriors, Freedom from Inside Out, and the Prison Abolition Initiative and others. Thank you all for being on the front line. And so, in 1881, during an appeal to Congress for impartial suffrage, Frederick Douglass once asked, will slavery never end? He posed this question because Mr. Douglass knew then what many of us still today haven't realized or are just now figuring out. Involuntary servitude, that is, extracting forced labor out of people, never ended. The popular narrative is one in which involuntary servitude was abolished in 1865 as a result of the outcome of the Civil War. Well, we are all here today because nothing could be further from the truth. Involuntary servitude was never abolished. Instead, it was conditioned. And what it was conditioned upon was incarceration. So whether you're tuned in at home or standing in solidarity at the Capitol, as you listen to my voice, you are not incarcerated and may ask why this is an issue you should care about. Well, my answer is this. I believe in our ability as a collective to evolve in our shared humanity. In the year 2021, there's no moral argument to be wagered in support of enslaving a human being under any circumstances. Second of all, the intersectional nature of this immorality serves as the catalyst for underlying conditions with ramifications that impact us all. For example, less than best rehabilitative practices, higher rates of recidivism than need be, and hundreds of $millions in taxpayer money wasted or misspent. Third but not least, as long as involuntary servitude is allowed to stand, it shines as an ignominious scarlet letter on the chest of us all who stand by allowing it to occur. Dr. Martin Luther King once said, and I'm paraphrasing, it's not only the perpetrator of the act who is to blame, but those who give tacit agreement by remaining silent in the face of injustice. That is why we are here today, to revoke tacit agreement and invoke the public decline of anachronistic, unjust practice that has no place in the great state of California. Finally, in closing, I just want to speak directly to the incarcerated women, men, children, and youth considering adopting criminality as a coping mechanism for personal and transgenerational trauma. Education. Education is a powerful transformative tool. To be trained is to be prepared to execute a task. To be educated is to be prepared to change the world. Education transforms the learner internally and empowers them to externally change their circumstances and their reality. I speak before you today as an example of that. So be encouraged and get educated. And with that, I'll leave you with the 10P motto. Any time is a good time to better ourselves, and no time is better than the present. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. And
Thank you very much.
if I may, I'm going to take a few moments because I think it's important to understand that involuntary servitude is not something that's old and archaic, but is actually happening right now. Samuel is calling in live from the plantation. Samuel is a frontline worker. He has been exposed to COVID. Matter of fact, Samuel, I'm going to let you tell your own story. Please do.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm what they call an environmental technician, which is the technical term for a hospital custodian. And so shout out to all of the hospital custodians, environmental technicians in all the hospitals all throughout the state and around the world, because sometimes we go unrecognized. And as such, I am on the front line. And I was the very first person, you know, part of the healthcare facility maintenance crew here at Lancaster State Prison, to actually be required to go in a cell and an office and disinfect it and sanitize it after a staff member and an inmate tested positive for COVID-19. And it was at the beginning of the pandemic, and everyone was terrified. And I'm terrified. I'm still terrified because mass incarceration is a smorgasbord for a pandemic. We're just sitting here waiting to get feasted upon. And so when I was required to go in that room to clean it, I was terrified. The doctors were scared. The nurses were scared. No one really knew what to expect. And I went in there, and I did it. It was surreal. But when it was all said and done, after a while, I myself contracted COVID-19. And I was fearful for my life. And it gave me a new outlook on life. But I could not refuse to go to work. For a couple of days, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, I would tell my supervisors, you know what, man, I'm only going to work 1 day out of the week, maybe 2 days out of the week. And they let me get away with it for maybe 1 week. Then they was like, you can't do that. You need to come to work or you're going to get a write-up, a rules violation report. And that rules violation report, that is the new whip. That's the whip on the modern day plantation. Because if you don't report to work like they tell you to, and they write you up a disciplinary report, then it extends your time. It causes you to lose telephone privileges, family visiting privileges, packages, canteen, and it's really it's barbaric and unfortunate. And to make matters worse, if you have to appear before the Board of Parole hearing, then when you go to the Board of Parole hearings, because of the disciplinary report, they'll say that you've been a program failure, and it shows that you pose an unreasonable risk to society, and therefore shouldn't be released. And based on Marcy's law, you'll get a 15-year denial, and if there's mitigating evidence to walk it down, it goes from a 15-year denial to a 10-year denial to a 7-year denial to a 5-year denial, and the least that they can give you now is a 3-year denial. And this would be a result of me saying I'm fearful for my life because of COVID-19. I'm asthmatic. I've had a collapsed lung. I have a terminal illness, whatever the case may be, and I couldn't refuse. And they would hit me with the modern day whip. So to answer your question, that's pretty much a snapshot of what involuntary servitude looks like and the situation that it places many of us in.
Thank you for that, Samuel. So, as you have heard directly, these are not old archaic stories. There are men and women inside of our prison facilities every single day that are being denied basic human rights and decency. If COVID-19 has not come to teach us anything else, it should have come to teach us that we are all one. We are one humanity, and we are fighting for that. It is 2021, and under no circumstance should involuntary servitude remain in California's state constitution.
So with that, I want to formally conclude this press conference. Of course, folks are available if there are any questions, but thank you. And we look forward to getting this across the finish line and sending it to the voters. Thank you.